All right, man, peace. So for those of you brothers who saw the Conor McGregor versus Khabib Nurmagomedov fight on Saturday night, we pretty much got at least what I expected. I thought that Khabib would end up choking out Conor. That is how it went. I was not surprised by anything that transpired over the course of the fight. Conor certainly, I won't say that he got exposed, but I'll say that in combat sports, just like life, there's levels to everything. And what Conor faced when he got in the ring was someone who's pretty much, I won't say an expert at every level of combat, but is good enough at every level and is exceptional at certain levels to where he was able to expose Conor's weaknesses. And Conor does have quite a few weaknesses in his fighting style. He's not a good grappler. And to be quite frank with you, even though he's very powerful with his strikes for a UFC fighter, he leaves a lot to be desired when it comes to his striking technique. He keeps his chin up in the air. His defense is poor. He's not even well conditioned enough in regards to his muscular endurance to hold his hands up, which is a major problem in combat sports. Not even just in UFC, but also in boxing. You'll oftentimes see fighters that can't keep their hands up for the entire round. And that makes a huge difference because it leaves you open to a lot more counters. And as we saw when Conor got knocked down, it was because he got countered with a very hard counter right hand from Khabib, because Conor had his left hand down, trying to act as if he was Muhammad Ali, and he's not. In most of Conor's previous fights, the reason why he's been so effective with the striking is because he's had the longer reach. Conor has extremely long arms for his height. And I believe that he even had a longer reach than Khabib. But Khabib is much more sound in his striking techniques than Conor McGregor is. And it showed in the fight. And of course, once they got on the ground, it was over. But I also want to address this because a lot of people are having a very difficult time understanding why Khabib did what he did. And I've touched on this notion in previous videos. We live in a troll society. And what do I mean by that? People get their kicks by trying to talk shit to other people to see what their breaking point is. And then when that person snaps, they want to act incredulous as to why things went overboard like they did. Once Conor McGregor decided that he was going to start talking about Khabib's family, about his religious beliefs, so on and so forth, in such a personal way, it wasn't in a form to edify anyone. He was doing what he did to perturb Khabib and to get him to come out of character, to embarrass him. And when you do those type of things, it's going to result in an extreme amount of rancor, in an extreme amount of malice from your opponent. We saw a very similar dynamic with Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier, where Ali decided that he was going to cast Joe Frazier as the white man's Negro, as a sellout, as an Uncle Tom, called him a gorilla, things of that nature. And Joe Frazier, prior to their first fight, prayed that God would give him the ability to kill Ali in the ring. And that's a fact. Before their first fight, Joe Frazier prayed that he would be given the ability to kill Ali in the ring because he thought that he was, quote unquote, unrighteous. And we're seeing a very similar rapport develop between Conor and Khabib. Now, according to Dana White, Conor wants to fight Khabib again in an immediate rematch, which doesn't surprise me. It's on brand for Conor. What do I think is going to happen in the rematch? I think that the same thing is going to happen. I give Conor the same chance in a rematch as I gave him in their first fight. If he's fortunate enough to catch Khabib with something hard and sharp, a straight left hand coming in, then he may be able to get the knockout. But from what I see, Khabib pretty much has everything buttoned up overall. So anyway, I'm going to let Khabib talk about it. And of course, I'm going to chime in. Dana White sat down to give an interview with Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman. We're also going to go through that as well.
First of all, I want to say sorry to Athletic Commission, Nevada, sorry to Vegas. I know this is not my best side. This is not my best side. I'm a human being and...
Bro, you don't have to make that many excuses, at least not to me. There are going to be people who did not like what you did, but everybody has a breaking point. And when you have people who are constantly trying to see if they could push you over the edge and somebody snaps, we cannot be that surprised.
I don't understand how people can talk about I jump on the cage, What about he talk about my religion, he talk about my country, he talk about my father. He come to Brooklyn and he broke bus, he almost killed couple people. What about this? What about this? Why people talk about I jump over the cage?
That's easy, because Conor McGregor has a much more powerful cult of personality than you, Khabib. That's what it's about. It's very obvious leading up to the fight that Dana White was on Conor McGregor's side, and that he's hoping to utilize that Conor McGregor energy to take the UFC to another level. And believe me, he's hoping that Conor McGregor can defeat you in a rematch. I think that even he doubts that is going to happen. But Conor McGregor has a huge cult of personality. He's one of the most popular athletes on the planet. He's right up there with Ronaldo and a lot of the other top soccer stars. He's even more popular than LeBron James. Conor McGregor is, there's no doubt about it, on the worldwide stage. So we've all seen Conor McGregor do a lot of outlandish things in the past. He himself jumped over the fence of the octagon to get in the face of Jose Aldo. They said nothing about it. It is what it is. I just thought it was hilarious when Khabib jumped over the fence. My man did a double flying kick into the crowd like he didn't give a shit, man. And Conor McGregor has to be very, very, very careful. He's writing a lot of checks that he may have to cash down the line. He's starting to embark on a very Tupacian path. And those paths, they never end well. When you decide that you're going to say anything that you feel like saying and piss off every and anybody and say whatever you feel like saying in any way that you feel like saying it, you better be prepared for what's going to come. Because Khabib was dead serious, and his people are dead serious. They're not playing games. And much was made about the brawl that occurred within the octagon where Khabib's corner jumped in and supposedly they jumped Conor McGregor. I saw one of Khabib's cornermen approach McGregor, and it seemed like they both threw punches at the same time. Whatever energy you put out is what you're going to get back. That's basically how that goes.
Khabib not playing. He defeats Conor by submission in the main event at UFC 229. It was lit, but unfortunately, it's the brawl after the fight that's making a lot of headlines.
Well, the reason why the brawl after the fight is making a lot of headlines is because the fight itself was an ass whooping. Khabib basically just beat the shit out of Conor from round one all the way until the end. There was not one phase of combat where Conor was able to outclass Khabib. Not one. Not in the stand-up game, not in the ground game. And there was one point where, Khabib had that man on the ground just beating the living shit out of that guy.
Nurmagomedov jumping out of the octagon to attack McGregor's trainer. Then two men jumped into the ring, started throwing punches at McGregor. And joining us now to discuss the fight in the melee after is UFC President Dana White. Dana, thank you so much for being with us.
Good morning.
Dana, I want to start with the two fights, but actually first get your reaction to what happened after on Saturday.
Yeah, well, it was a great card, a great event to be at, and then all of a sudden we knew that some things could happen after the fight, so we had everything in place to make sure that didn't happen.
Well, obviously you failed. Let me say this. The reason why you knew that there was the potentiality for something to occur after the fight is because you allowed McGregor to continuously and continually harass this man Khabib about his family and about his quote-unquote religion. You allowed that because you allow McGregor to do whatever he wants because he's an agent of chaos. McGregor also, very clear to me, is an MK asset. I mentioned this in a previous video. He has the winding serpent going up his spine, the winding serpent tattoo, or the caduceus per se. So it's very obvious to me what McGregor is, and Dana White understands that, at least for the immediate future, his wagon is hitched to McGregor's star. So it's going to be very interesting to see what they do with Khabib.
And then I didn't see Khabib jumping over the cage like that. He got over that thing quick and was going after one of Conor's cornermen.
Why would you be shocked by that? Khabib is a world-class athlete. You're surprised that he can get over a fence really quick? You saw McGregor get over the fence real quick to go harass Jose Aldo,
who was still talking, saying...
And by the way, McGregor was trying to get over the fence also. It's just that he got pulled off of it. He was trying to jump into the fray. And he probably would have got his ass beat again.
Saying stuff to him after the fight. So, first of all, the crew that we had in place did a good job of containing this thing so it didn't get out of control. And but yeah, not our best moment.
Dana, when you listen to Khabib talk after the fight, it was almost as if he felt completely justified. He talked about Conor McGregor in his camp talking about his religion, his country, his own father, for crying out loud. He brought up all of that stuff somewhat as justification. Although he was apologetic, his mentality is, I was going after them.
Of course, his mentality was he was going to war. Once again, there's only so much that any human being is going to tolerate and going to take. You can pull that "it was only words" card if you want to. At the end of the day, you have to be prepared for what you're going to get in return based off of the energy that you put out. Unless you're speaking about cultures and religions from the standpoint of edifying, if you're just trying to harass somebody on a personal level, you do have to understand that eventually they're going to try to strike back. And this is not over for Khabib, I guarantee you that. When and if Dana White decides to approach him with the rematch with McGregor, Khabib is going to accept. Because I'm going to be very, very honest with you. When I watched Khabib choking out McGregor, it looked like he didn't give a damn if he snapped McGregor's neck in half.
This is the kind of stuff that they were doing to me. What do you say to that?
Right. Right. Listen, there's no doubt that he's justified for being upset and everything else. But first of all, you just won the fight. You just beat the biggest superstar in all of sports.
Well, you know what, Dana White? That's not quite something that you can say when the issue is personal, not professional. We all know that we do have to maintain a certain amount of decorum, especially in a professional environment. But when the professional environment is combat sports, you do have to understand that things can spill over. These things do happen. Sometimes issues, they carry over. Once again, you look at the Muhammad Ali-Joe Frazier rivalry. Ali oftentimes took it personal. And when I say took it personal, I'm not talking about within himself. I'm talking about in the manner in which he addressed Joe Frazier. They also got into a brawl when they were both sitting down with Howard Cosell to try to promote their second fight, the rematch in Madison Square Garden. And they were going over the footage of the first fight. And Joe Frazier was clearly so angry still in the build-up for the second fight. And you know how fighters are. They're in the fight camp. They're training. They basically build themselves up physically and mentally. Mentally, they're building themselves up. Certain fighters build themselves up to hate their opponent. Joe Frazier was one of those guys who built himself up to hate certain opponents. Ali was someone who did not necessarily need that type of energy because, you know, he was motivated to succeed and win by other factors. He wanted the championship belt. He wanted to be able to bring attention to himself and a lot of his causes. And being the champion of boxing in the heavyweight division would have afforded him a lot more validity in many of his claims regarding to race and so on and so forth. So he didn't particularly care about the collateral damage of a Joe Frazier. And once again, he was very angry at Joe Frazier because Joe Frazier happened to be the recipient of the heavyweight belt once Ali was stripped of it, once Frazier was able to win that heavyweight tournament that they put many of the top contenders through. Point being is this: they sat down with Howard Cosell to build up the fight. They had an interview. They were going over the first fight. And Joe Frazier decided that he was going to try to engage Ali in verbal volleying. And of course, he failed because you cannot beat Muhammad Ali in verbal volleying. Back then, he was the creme de la creme of shit talking. One thing led to another. Joe Frazier got up. He tried to stand over Ali. Ali basically was amazed that Joe Frazier was willing to start a street fight with him when they're trying to build up to a real heavyweight fight. Muhammad Ali's brother, Rahman, walked up behind Joe Frazier. Joe Frazier turned around, looked at Rahman. He said, "You want some of this too?" And Muhammad Ali took that moment to stand up, grab Joe Frazier by his shoulders and by his neck, pull him down to the ground, and they were on the ground grappling. And you could see that Joe Frazier had completely lost it. He had completely lost it. And the funny thing is, they took Joe Frazier out of the studio. Ali sat right back down with Howard Cosell like nothing happened. Like he didn't give a shit at all.
Let alone our sport. You know, you just beat him in front of the whole world. The whole world was watching. And it really wasn't about him and Conor at that moment. He was going after one of his cornermen. But
no, it was about that Conor energy. Because I guarantee you that whatever the cornerman was telling Khabib, it was most likely based off of some trash talk that Conor had initiated earlier on in the buildup of the fight. I'm sure that Conor's cornerman was saying a lot of personal things about Khabib, or his quote-unquote religion, or his family, or whatever, trying to get him out of his zone. But Khabib was locked in from the very beginning.
But the only one that's going to get hurt out of this whole thing is Khabib. Now he's got to go before the Nevada State Athletic Commission. They kept his purse. You know, all the things that were said and whatever. You won the fight. You had the opportunity to stand up there, get the belt put on you, and
Let me say this also. Just looking at McGregor in the build-up for this fight, right before the fight started, and even during the fight, he looked like a guy just going through the motions. He looked like someone who has entrapped himself in a cocoon of fame, and he's at a transformative period in his life. And he's going to have to come to terms with certain things. He's going to have to figure out if he really still wants to fight. Because these dudes in the UFC, they're going to be trying to hurt him really bad. So he's going to have to be prepared for that. And I'm not quite sure if he's as focused on combat sports as he tries to act like he is. Because to be quite honest with you, he looked like a McGregor impersonator. He didn't look like Conor McGregor himself. Now, I think that Khabib would have beaten Conor even if the best Conor had showed up that night, because McGregor just has too many flaws in his fighting style for Khabib to not have beaten him. But there was just nothing sharp about his approach. His attacks were slow. They were easy to anticipate. He telegraphed most of his punches. And what's funny is that Floyd Mayweather actually offered to open the Mayweather gym for Conor and his team to attend the Mayweather gym and maybe learn a few things about fighting, about boxing, at least the boxing portion of fighting, or what they call in UFC striking. And Conor turned him down because he's more concerned about his reputation and his bluster and maintaining that alpha male persona than he is actually learning. You know, there's an old saying. People who say that they can do something and people who say that they can't do something are usually both correct. So if Conor believes that there's nothing that Floyd Mayweather can teach him about boxing or striking, then he's correct, because he's going to be too proud. But just watching how Conor boxes, he leaves a lot to be desired. He keeps his chin way too high in the air, and he keeps his hands way too low. His footwork looked very slow as well.
In front of the whole world. Now you're going to stand in front of the Nevada State Athletic Commission. It's just a really bad decision in the heat of the moment.
Dana, there's something about a fight, I tweeted about this, like in a Game of Thrones trial by combat kind of way, that makes you feel like the winner has the moral high ground. And Nurmagomedov proved his point in the octagon and then kind of gave it away. I get that. But I want to focus on...
I'm not sure if he gave it away. I think that all he showed was that he's a human being.
On, like, the moral high ground by the antics-afters, I want to focus on the performance itself. Because since Ken Shamrock in the rematch with Gracie before Zuffa bought the UFC, grounded, and he got a draw, but Shamrock really won with the ground and pound. Ground and pound has been pretty tough to beat. And I'm thinking about Nurmagomedov, that performance last night in his career so far. I think he's the best I've ever seen ground and pound. And that was the ultimate example of it against a striker in Conor who can kind of defend against that stuff on the ground. Is he the best practitioner of ground and pound in the history of the UFC?
Yeah. He's definitely up there. Nurmagomedov is already on record as basically saying that he has very little respect for jiu-jitsu. He wears a shirt that says something along the lines of, those who are not good enough to do sambo, they do jiu-jitsu, something along those lines. Russian sambo, he's an expert at it. And it shows in the ring. He's an expert at a lot of things. He certainly brings a lot to the table in the octagon that's going to make him very difficult for another fighter to defeat him unless they can catch him with one blow, which is basically the only chance that Conor has. I said that coming into this fight, and if they have a rematch, I'll say that again. And it would not shock me if in their rematch, Conor tries to run more throughout their fight to make it last all 5 rounds and maybe try to just hit him at a distance. But I'm just not quite sure if he's going to be able to escape the grappling aspect. And he has no chance on the ground with Khabib, no chance. Because Khabib is a cardio horse, and Conor is the exact opposite. I mean, to be quite honest with you, a lot of people are surprised at why Conor gasses out. He's not someone who likes to do road work. And I got into a little back and forth with someone about this. I think I was doing a video on Deontay Wilder. And I was saying that Deontay does not do his road work. He needs to do road work. And he was saying, well, Deontay does the HIIT cardio. See, that's good when you're facing fighters who are not on a high level of aerobic conditioning. See, back in the 70s, heavyweight fighters, they did road work. They had to. Because it was 15 rounds and every other fighter was going to come in with a high level of aerobic conditioning. There's a reason why Muhammad Ali could dance for 15 rounds. I don't care how much stationary bike work you do and HIIT cardio. Nothing replaces that road work, man. Nothing.
Yeah, the thing about him is once he gets a hold of you, takes you down, he has that unbelievable pressure where he stays so close to you, you can't move. And then once he gets in position, he destroys you.
And even when he started wearing Conor down and they stood up, he was beating Conor boxing.
Absolutely, because Conor McGregor is an overrated boxer. He's a powerful striker for a UFC fighter, but he leaves a lot to be desired in regards to his technique.
Like the striking stuff in the middle of the ring, Conor was landing some stuff here and there, but not really much that bothered him. He was the one landing the crisper shots because he'd already worn him down on the ground. I mean,
and he's a much sharper puncher in regards to his technique. Khabib shoots his shots and he brings his hands right back where they belong. His hands are normally in good position. McGregor's hands are never in good position.
I mean, the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world right now?
Yeah, he is. There's no doubt in my mind right now that you have to put Khabib as the #1 top pound-for-pound fighter in the UFC, especially in the aftermath of Demetrius Johnson losing.
Yeah, definitely. And what he said was his corner told me that what the plan was to go in there, wear Conor out, and then he wanted to knock him out standing. That was what he really wanted to do.
Yeah, I think that he wanted to do that, and then he realized, around the third round, where Conor and him started to go back and forth a little bit. I thought that the third round was the only round that Conor had where he was even remotely competitive. And then I think that Khabib said to himself, you know what, let me not play around with this guy. Let me just choke his ass out.
But you go in and obviously taking Conor down and finishing him that way was much easier. So he did what he always does.
I want to go
there's
back.
a lot of guys who fight. There's a lot of guys who fight that style that make it very boring.
Now that was a shot at Tyron Woodley.
There's nothing boring about the way Khabib fights and wins.
I wouldn't mind seeing Khabib fight Woodley somewhere down the line.
Well, there's no question about that. Certainly wasn't the case Saturday night. I give you that. I wanted to go back to what one of Khabib's quartermen said. He talked about they were just decrying what Conor and his camp were doing. And then there's a quote that I'm reading from USA Today, and it says, "Let's be real here. The UFC promoted this fight with the videos. They didn't promote this as going to a golf tournament. They promoted this as a fight. Once again, giving not just only justification to Khabib feeling the way that he felt and choosing to go after them the way that he did, but also pointing to the UFC as being somewhat culpable about what transpired." To that you say what, Dana White?
Dumbest quote I've ever heard in my life.
No, sir, there's nothing dumb about that quote. All they're doing is correctly analyzing the methodology that you allowed to transpire to build up that fight. You allow McGregor to say whatever he wanted to say about that man. And, hey, that's par for the course. It's combat sports. At the end of the day, we're going to get in the ring. I said this in the preview video. You can talk all the shit you want to talk. You're going to have to see that man in the octagon or the ring or what have you. That's what makes combat sports so great. You can talk shit all day, but you still have to see that guy. And once you saw that guy, you saw what happened. Khabib was ready to kill him. That's why I stated earlier in the video that it reminded me a lot of Joe Frazier before their first fight with Muhammad Ali. Before his first fight against Ali, he wanted to kill that man. And I guarantee you, Khabib wanted to kill McGregor. And the fact that he had to listen to the referee tell him to stop after Conor McGregor tapped him a couple times, the fact that he had to actually adhere to that, there was still a lot of rage that he had to let out. That's why he jumped over that fence. He said, you know what, I can't kill this guy, so I'm just going to kill somebody else.
You're an idiot, whoever wrote that. This is a fight. And the way that we promoted this fight was exactly the way that this thing played out. That's all part of the storyline. Believe me, we've had almost 20 years I've been doing this. We've had plenty of fights where there's tons of bad blood.
I could see McGregor somewhere down the line becoming a big burnout. He seems like an action junkie. We'll see what happens with him.
Blood and all kinds of things like this happen, and we don't have fights after the fights. We have scuffles with guys in the back. I mean, this is the fight business, and a lot of people don't like each other. That's just that's a stupid opinion.
Dana, you're gonna.
No, there's nothing stupid about that opinion. Dana White, you should have taken Conor to the side and said, look, we don't really want you talking these type of things about this man. Like, Conor McGregor basically was associating Khabib with 9/11 in a roundabout way, in a 6 degrees of separation type of way. So he was taking all the way there. At the end of the day, you have to understand that whatever you allow is going to necessitate what transpires thereafter. So if Dana White is okay with that, then you cannot say that you're not okay with Khabib doing what he did. You have to be okay with the whole thing. That's why I state that we live in a troll society, and people want to act shocked when they utilize trolling as a methodology to garner attention for themselves, and then when it spills out of control, they want to act shocked. You can't do it like that. You have to take the good with the bad.
You're going to be mad when I said it, but I kind of love what Khabib did.
Of course you love what Khabib did. You like to see that type of alpha male behavior. I like what he did also. Let me rewind this back just so that we can hear what Molly Karam stated again.
You know, that's a stupid opinion.
Dana, you're going to be mad when I said it, but I kind of love what Khabib did. I'm sorry that he went out there and he just showed his heart, and he's not going to play, and he's going to go after the guy, and he kind of retaliated. But that's just coming from a fan's perspective. But
I agree. I like what Khabib did as well. I would not have advised him to do that, but I'm not going to tell him that he's wrong for doing what he did. At the end of the day, he stood up for his own manhood.
But can we expect...
No, I understand, and a lot of people feel the way that you feel.
Yeah, it makes me root for him. I got to be honest with you.
But you know who doesn't like it? The Nevada State Athletic Commission, and that's where the problem is.
Dana, what about a rematch?
Let me say this. I remember when Floyd Mayweather fought Zab Judah, and Floyd Mayweather's trainer at the time, Roger Mayweather, he believed that at some point in the fight, Zab Judah would do something shady. He would do something dirty, which of course he did. After about 6 or 7 rounds in a row of getting his ass beat, Zab decided that he was going to hit Floyd low, which were based on the directions of his father. I believe his name is Yoel Judah. Yoel Judah told Zab in the corner after one of those rounds to start hitting Floyd low because they were getting annoyed by Floyd's continuous attacks to Zab's body. So I believe it was in the 10th round where Zab decided that he was going to hit Floyd low. He hit him right in the cup. Floyd doubled over, and Roger Mayweather jumped in. Now, I would not have advised Roger Mayweather to do that, but I wasn't against it because it showed undying loyalty. And that's something that's very, very hard to find, to have somebody who's going to have your back like that. Now, of course, Floyd Mayweather stepped to the side. He went over to the neutral corner because he said after that whole fracas, he said, I'm not going to allow anything to affect my money. Now, Roger Mayweather, I believe that he was suspended by the Nevada State Athletic Commission. He was not allowed to be in Floyd's corner in his next fight. I believe he fought Baldomir after that. And Leonard Ellaby had to man the corner by himself, basically. But we all know Floyd, basically, he could do everything on his own. But it just reminded me of that because it was that same level, or it was an approximate level of vitriol heading into that fight. And you kind of knew that Zab Judah was a wild card. So, I mean, I didn't mind it. I mean, it is what it is. You know, it's a fight. Shit's going to happen. If you don't want things to spill over, do not allow the level of banter back and forth to become so personal. I think that Dana White was derelict in his duties in the buildup of this first fight, and now he wants to act like he does not know what happened, or like he has no culpability.
Rematch.
You know, first of all, he has to go before the commission. We have to see what's going to happen with Khabib with this whole mess. But Conor McGregor has already called me wanting a rematch.
Well, let's be very, very clear about this, Dana White. We know that you're going to assist Khabib in whatever way possible because the build-up for the next fight is going to be huge. Basically, this is Conor's career on the line in a rematch. He has to win the rematch. If he does not win, he basically just becomes a gatekeeper. If he can't beat Khabib, he's going to become similar to Adrian Broner. The difference between Floyd Mayweather and Adrian Broner, at least on a surface level, is that Floyd Mayweather has a multitude of skills, and there are a lot of tools in his toolbox that he can go to. Adrian Broner was a mimic of Floyd Mayweather based off of pretense. He had no interest in becoming as adroit in a myriad of boxing skills as Floyd Mayweather. So that's the difference. Now, Conor McGregor, he styles himself as the best fighter in the UFC. But if he cannot beat Khabib, then we know that that's not what he is. And if he were not to be able to beat Khabib in the next fight, now people are going to start to go through his resume, and they're going to start to nitpick his resume. That's what happens when you lose 2 straight fights to a great fighter. People go into your resume and they say, well, was he really as good as we thought?
Dana, an immediate rematch, or are you going to build him? Can Conor build himself up a little bit before an immediate rematch with him?
What type of build-up does Conor McGregor need, Max Kellerman? What type of build-up does he need? What Conor should have done is he should have gotten a little bit of a tune-up before this fight. But that's going against brand. He's caught up in his own cult of personality, so now he has to keep going with it. Like I said, he reminds me a lot of Tupac in a way. And we know how that ended. He's more concerned about his own image than his fans even are. So he cannot allow himself to have a tune-up. He did the same thing when he lost to Nate Diaz. He demanded an immediate rematch. And kudos to him for doing that. He's going to demand an immediate rematch with Khabib. I don't see this fight ending any differently should they be able to schedule an immediate rematch. But we'll see what happens.
With this guy?
I don't. That's what she just asked me, and I said that's what Conor has asked for. We'll see what happens with Khabib and what's next. I mean, Tony Ferguson looked amazing. Those two have been lined up to fight, 3 different times. And
Dana White, you know damn well you're not gonna put Khabib in the ring with no damn Tony Ferguson. You want to get that immediate rematch.
And it hasn't happened, so we'll see how this thing plays out.
All right, Dana, appreciate you. We'll talk soon.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye, guys.
When we come back.
But anyway, that's basically it on that. I thought that the event was pretty much overshadowed by the post-fight brawl. But whenever you have an event that went how I thought it was going to go, which is Khabib dominance, what else is going to happen? I really have no problem with what Khabib did. It's not something that I would have advised, but at the end of the day, he did what he felt like he had to do. He's going to have to suffer the consequences for it. But once again, we live in a troll society. For some strange reason, people think that they could say whatever they want to say to other people with no intent at edification or what have you, just trying to put out whatever energy they can to try to annoy or get under people's skin and then act shocked when things spin out of control. But it's a fight game. So we'll see how McGregor comes back. If he's able to defeat Khabib in a rematch, suddenly now he starts to become the UFC version of Muhammad Ali. If he loses, then he becomes the male version of Ronda Rousey. We're about to find out. So peace.